Marc-Andre Leclerc. He's been doing all kinds of crazy alpine soloing. What I'm doing is on rock, and then I see Marc-Andre free soloing on ice and snow.
First time I heard about Marc, he's living in a snow cave on the parkway or something. He is pushing things that is pretty much unknown.
I'm Marc-Andre Leclerc. I'm a climber, generally speaking.
He's different than anyone I'd ever met. I love him for that.
He belongs in a different era when it was like wild.
I can tell little Marc-Andre stories all day, but he doesn't even care if anybody ever knows who he's climbing.
It's like all of the superficialities of life just sort of evaporate.
How was it? Scary?
No, not particularly.
The Alpinist is a documentary about Marc-Andre Leclerc, a Canadian climber who took extreme solo climbing to a whole new level. Unlike most climbers who train with teams, use ropes, and plan every detail, Marc-Andre climbed completely alone, often without telling anyone where he was going. He wasn't doing it for fame or sponsorships. He simply loved climbing and wanted to experience the mountains in the purest way possible. The film, directed by Peter Mortimer and Nick Rosen, follows Marc-Andre as he takes on some of the world's most dangerous climbs. These aren't just any mountains. He climbs massive icy peaks with no ropes or backup. One wrong move could mean disaster, but Marc-Andre isn't focused on the risk. He's fully in the moment, moving effortlessly up cliffs and most people wouldn't dream of attempting. Throughout the documentary, we see interviews with famous climbers who all agreed that Marc-Andre was doing things that no one else could. He didn't care about publicity, which meant that many of his greatest climbs went unnoticed. Even the filmmakers struggled to keep up with him because he would disappear into the mountains without warning, and he just didn't like media attention or publicity or anything like that. Peter Mortimer and Nick Rosen are experienced filmmakers in the climbing world, and they set out to make The Alpinist because they were fascinated by Marc-Andre's story. Unlike most elite climbers, he wasn't chasing sponsorships, media attention, or competition. He was climbing purely for the love of it, disappearing into the mountains without telling anyone, and completing historic climbs that few even knew about. His approach was different from anything they had seen before. Their goal with this documentary was to bring Marc-Andre's story to the world. Not to make him famous, but to capture his passion, philosophy, and the incredible things he achieved. They wanted to show that true dedication to his sport what it looks like and it explores the fine line between pushing limits and the risks that come with it. However, filming him was kind of like a challenge since Marc-Andre wasn't focused on publicity. He often left without notice, making it difficult for the filmmakers to document his climbs. But this only reinforced why they needed to tell his story, because he represented a pure, genuine, almost old school version of climbing that is rare today. The Alpinist isn't just about climbing. It's a story about passion, freedom, and what it means to truly dedicate yourself to something. Marc-Andre's love for climbing is clear in every scene, but so is the reality of the risks he takes. The film doesn't shy away from showing the dangers of his lifestyle, and it builds up to an emotional and heartbreaking conclusion that makes you think about the fine line between adventure and survival. Overall, The Alpinist is breathtaking, inspiring, and at times deeply emotional. And yeah, that's basically what it's about.
In the documentary, The Alpinist, Peter Mortimer and Nick Rosen assert that Canadian climber Marc-Andre Leclerc's free-spirited and solo approach to alpine climbing represents the purest form of adventure and commitment to the sport. Mortimer and Rosen support this claim by showcasing Leclerc's daring ascents, interviews with fellow climbers, and breathtaking cinematography that captures both the beauty and dangers of his climbs, emphasizing his unconventional lifestyle and philosophy. Their purpose is to highlight Leclerc's unique passion and philosophy towards climbing in order to explore the deeper motivations behind extreme alpinism. They establish the ongoing and reflective relationship with the audience of outdoor enthusiast climbers and those fascinated by stories of human perseverance and risk-taking.
The Alpinist uses vertigo-inducing camera work to highlight the physical risk Leclerc is taking, contrasted with calming sounds of nature, showing the peace and single-minded meditative mindset that Leclerc possesses. Interviews with experienced climbers and alpinists certify the surprising results of Leclerc's ability to climb calmly in a meditative state. And thought-provoking storytelling from the producers challenges the societal norms of everyday life, suggesting that perhaps there's a part of being human that has been lost to so many in their drab, modernized, day-to-day slog through life. A part of a fulfilled life, a passion tied to a pursuit where happiness is the only true goal. Now I'm going to get into some of the body of our rhetorical analysis of this film. So one of the main components of their rhetoric was the vertigo-inducing camera work, and I'll just show you a clip of that here.
Mark is doing things that people thought could never be done. He's redefining what's possible.
This is the evolution of alpinism, and it's happening right now in our backyard, and it's happening with that young guy.
That part of the movie really helps to showcase how dangerous and how extreme what Marc-Andre Leclerc is doing. And it also helps to show his mindset during his climbs, because they include the calming sounds of nature that many might listen to in order to meditate or to fall asleep. But they showcase that while Marc-Andre Leclerc is hanging off the side of a cliff face by his two ice picks. And it just really creates a contrast that shows how Marc-Andre Leclerc's calmness in his climbing is what leads to his success. And it also, later when Marc-Andre Leclerc is speaking about his experience in interviews, it brings context to what he's saying while he describes how he feels and how climbing is an outlet for his mental health. Another rhetorical strategy that the film uses to communicate its point is expert interviews with other climbers such as Alex Honnold and Brett Harrington, who was actually the girlfriend of Marc-Andre Leclerc while he was alive. And some of the interviews have different purposes. For example, Alex Honnold's interview has the purpose of qualifying Marc-Andre Leclerc's extreme feats and just showing how, even on the professional level, Marc-Andre Leclerc's summits are astounding. And for such a young person to be doing them without ropes, it's incredible. And then interviews like Brett Harrington's of family members and close friends, they go to show how climbing helped Marc-Andre Leclerc personally. And Brett Harrington actually goes into a clip where she talks about how Marc-Andre Leclerc got into like drugs and alcohol in a party scene in the area where he lived, and how that was really bad for him. And then he found climbing as a way to get out of that. And while he lost climbing for a while he was doing drugs and alcohol and things like that, climbing is what helped him come back into like a steady mental state and be calm and safe and happy with his life without drugs. The final rhetorical device that the film used to communicate its point was the storytelling by the producers. And they really showed the behind the scenes of the movie. They described how Marc-Andre Leclerc really wasn't that interested in having his feats like out there on the internet, and he was much more just about the experience of the climbing. And for him, it wasn't that important to get the accolades or the respect or any of that from anyone, honestly. His only goal was to enjoy climbing and to go out and do what he loved to do. in the mountains. And the way that the producers show how he kind of dropped contact with them, wasn't that interested, and just the storytelling that they used to describe how he like went off communication and just like went to South America to climb a mountain without telling anyone. It just really shows how Marc-Andre Leclerc's passion was the driving force behind his climbing, and there was no reason other than his personal happiness that he attained from climbing. It was just that, and that's what makes his story so special, and makes it something that affects everyone. In that most people don't have those like goals and those passions that they pursue, and so they're missing out on some happiness that they could really benefit from. And that's what this movie is really about. And those storytelling sections really show how genuine Marc-Andre Leclerc is, and it's a powerful rhetorical device to show that.
Okay, so going off of some of the really like big strengths from this film, I would say just he had a production team, which was really cool because you were able to just see all of the amazing captures of his climbs. So this just captured really like high altitude visuals of Leclerc's climbs, which is just really cool to see, and how it is like really beautiful but also so dangerous at the same time. And I feel like also when he did have his interviews, you were able to see like the true side of him. So unlike a lot of climbers, he doesn't really have that big of a personality, and they really showed that in the film. They were able to show that Leclerc, he's more of like a quiet person, and I feel like that was a really cool thing to tell, since it was different. Like he doesn't want all that attention that he could get from these climbs. Some more points I'd like to talk about is just how the film just really delivered like why he climbs. It's not for the fame, it's just for personal fulfillment and to have connection with nature. And then also just him being off the grid at times. He's really free-spirited. I feel like throughout the film a lot of character development was seen, and that was really refreshing, compelling to the story, and it just added more depth and feeling to the film. At the end of the film, Marc-Andre Leclerc does sadly pass due to doing what he loves, though, climbing, and it was his ongoing passion. Yes, this is heartbreaking, but it is inspiring. Although Marc-Andre Leclerc lived life to his fullest and passed doing what he loves.
According to a National Institute of Health study done on passion is actually not as important a factor or as good a predictor of future success as parental support, which actually refutes the argument made in The Alpinist and shows that passion, while important, is trumped by parental support in many situations as a predictor and as a factor in success. And we can actually see this in The Alpinist. Marc-Andre Leclerc's mother is very supportive of his climbing. She actually homeschooled him for several years, so he had even more time to climb, and eventually through high school she had to put him back into public school, and that was a bit of a struggle for him, but he still found his passion for climbing after high school and was supported by his mother in his choice to go climb.